I just watched the brand new 2025 remake of Snow White, and whew, I don't say this lightly, but this might be the worst Disney remake I've ever seen. Let's talk about it. What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here, and as I do with all my movie reviews, I'm gonna give you a little bit of information about Snow White 2025. I'll talk about the things I did and did not like about the movie, and finally, hopefully, I'll be able to let you know whether or not this is something you should spend your time and money seeing in theaters. If that kind of thing sounds good to you and you want to see more movie reviews just like this, make sure you subscribe. Okay, so to kind of set the plate here, let me tell you about my expectations going into this movie. Now, I think we all know and can agree that Disney's track record with these live-action remakes of their animated classics haven't been that great. In fact, I would say more misses than hits. And with Snow White, this thing's been getting roasted online since the movie was originally announced. So between some of the questionable creative choices, some of the behind the scenes drama, and a lead actress that hasn't been the most likable, I think it's safe to say I didn't have high hopes going into this one. All that said, I do always try to give a movie the benefit of the doubt going into it, so even though I didn't have very high hopes, I was open-minded and I was hoping that the movie would surprise me. And unfortunately, it didn't. I watched Snow White last night in theaters with my girlfriend, and pretty much the entire time we were watching the movie, we were rolling our eyes and just giggling to each other about how ridiculous some of the scenes were. That plus I was checking my watch a few times throughout the movie, which is always a really bad sign. The original Snow White movie that came out in 1937 is about an hour and 20 minutes long, and this one's not much longer than that. I think maybe 15, 20-ish minutes longer. But boy, despite the fact that this movie is like an hour 45, hour 50 minutes, it felt so much longer. And just throughout the whole movie, there were all these choices that they made that just made me wonder, why on earth did they make this movie? Who asked for this version of Snow White? So okay, let me try to break down exactly what I didn't like about this movie, because so far we've been a little bit nebulous and broad. And we'll start real simple with the visuals. And this is one of those things that you immediately pick up on as soon as the movie starts, but the original Snow White, and really any animated Disney princess movie, is gonna be bright and colorful and vivid and just have a lot of energy visually. And in this movie, it felt like they were kind of making a halfway attempt to bring that in, but then they slapped this weird dull color grade over everything, which just really reduced the contrast, and they turned down the saturation to, I guess, try to make it look more realistic. But this is such a fantasy story that it's not supposed to look realistic. It's supposed to look bright and colorful and vivid. And Snow White is the OG fantasy story when it comes to Disney movies. But it is supposed to be this bright and colorful magical world. And instead it just looked flat and lifeless. Then, speaking of visuals, we get to the dwarves. And yet again, they try to do this thing where they bridge the gap between real life and animation, and it just looks horrifying. The dwarves, especially Dopey, are straight up nightmare fuel in this movie. It honestly kind of reminded me of Polar Express and just that weird CG uncanny valley kind of stuff. But even beyond that, just the costumes in this movie. There's the iconic outfit that Snow White wears in the original animated movie, and she wears it again here, of course, but it just looks cheap and poorly made. It looks like a Spirit Halloween knockoff version of the costume. And really, all of this is to say, it just left me confused. You know, Disney has more money than any studio could ever possibly need to make whatever movies they want to make. And this is their OG Disney princess. So you would think that they would be able to afford all of the best of everything, the best animation, the best costumes, the best visuals, and it just didn't. It just didn't look as good as it should have. Then, of course, from there, we get into the music, which, you know, it's Snow White. Of course, it's a musical. And that, I feel like, is where it becomes the most clear that this movie is nowhere near as good as the original. They had a number of new songs and different characters singing new songs that they didn't have in the original movie. And every single one of them, for me, I felt like was a poor imitation of what we got out of the original Snow White. And then every time they would sing a song from the original movie, it just immediately in your brain just gets stuck in your head, and you're like, this is a catchy tune. And so that contrast between the new and the old there was just so drastic and so obvious. And now, of course, they cast Rachel Zegler as Snow White, and she is a phenomenal singer. So it's not, you know, her fault as far as her ability to sing. She's a fantastic singer. So anytime she's doing that, it's going to be great. It's just that the songs themselves were written so poorly, and pretty much everyone else that had their own little songs throughout the movie were so heavily auto-tuned that it was very clear that they're not strong singers themselves. Now, I know Gal Gadot is not known to be a singer. I don't know the name of the actor that played I don't know, he's not a prince, but like the love interest in the movie, but he seemed to be very heavily auto-tuned as well. Pretty much anyone other than Rachel Zegler had auto-tune cranked to the max. But then, even though I feel like Rachel Zegler did a great job with the singing, her acting was just weird. She would always do this kind of weird thing with her jaw that I can't really imitate, but it almost felt like she was trying to, I don't know if she was trying to force emotion out or if she had this idea of what the mannerisms her character was supposed to be doing were, but everything that she did whenever she was trying to emote or express something deeper just felt completely fake. It felt contrived. It felt like she was trying to imitate what a human would be doing in these moments. It was just very weird. And I don't know, oftentimes in these movies when an actor or an actress who is known to be of quality turns in a poor performance, usually that's the fault of maybe the director. You know, they're giving them bad direction, they're choosing maybe the wrong takes. But this just really felt like she was making a choice for this character that did not work and didn't fit at all with the original character that we know and love. Like if you go back and watch the original Snow White, there is no resemblance in the character and the way they communicate and the way that they just deal with all of the other interactions throughout the movie. They're completely different. There just wasn't any of that warmth or that spark, that sweetness that you get out of the original Snow White. And I know that they were trying to go maybe a different route with her character. And, you know, that's fine, I guess, but it's just not Snow White, right? If you have to fundamentally change who the character is and how they navigate the world, well, that's a different character. Another thing I want to talk about is the pacing, which I kind of touched on at the very beginning of the review. But this movie was not very long. I think an hour 45, hour 50 minutes, which is a reasonable length for a story like this. But boy, it dragged so much. And it really felt like, and I don't know exactly what happened with the writing process, but it felt like they had maybe a script ironed out that went a certain direction, and then for some reason decided to go through some rewrites and include some completely separate story arcs. And then you just ended up with this hodgepodge mess of a story that we have to tie up all these loose ends and connect all these different characters that we really didn't need. Like really, with Snow White, you need her, you need the evil queen, and you need the 7 dwarves, and that's it. Oh, and I guess the dude that comes in and gives her a kiss at the end. But here they were trying to implement so much more that it just dragged down the plot of the story. And the whole time, I just keep coming back to the same question. Why? Why did they make this movie? You know, when you're doing a remake of a beloved classic, you want usually one of a few different things. You want either one for the remake to kind of enhance the original, to bring new light to the original. Maybe it's a movie that kind of fell off over the years, and so you want to spark back up that love and that admiration. And that doesn't really work here because the original Snow White is an absolute classic that's never fallen off. So there's no real reason in that regard to remake it. And then another reason that you might have is maybe the technology has changed. Maybe, you know, you want to be able to kind of revisit this world, but in a whole new light to make it more exciting and interesting. And that's definitely not the case because this movie looks worse than the original, even though, of course, the original is just an animated movie. Then you think of, okay, maybe you want to kind of clean up some of the mess of the original. Maybe the original had some plot holes or some shortcomings, and you want to be able to kind of patch that up. But that doesn't really work here either because all they do is add storylines that don't matter and that don't fix anything from the original. And as much as I hate to say it, the only reason that I can really put together in my mind that they might have made this movie is a cash grab. They have a property that's really popular and successful, and they want to put out a new movie that they can get people to see in theaters and to buy on Blu-ray or to buy the different product or to go to the Disney theme parks and see the new rides or whatever attractions that they're going to have that coincide with this movie. It just feels like a cash grab. And for you and I, it feels like a waste of money to see in theaters. And now, look, I got to say, I am biased in a way because I get to see a lot of movies early and I get to see them for free. I get to go to early critic screenings and it's awesome. I love it. But I think it does warp my perspective a little bit because I'm not paying to see these movies. Now, for this particular movie, I wasn't able to make it to the advanced screening, so I did have to pay to see it in theaters. And with movie tickets, after fees and taxes and all that, costing almost $20, I was upset that I had to waste $20 to watch this movie in theaters. And I can't imagine if I'm just, an everyday normal dude who maybe has a wife and kids and you're all paying to go to see this movie in theaters and you're spending, dang near $100 on tickets and snacks and all that to watch a movie that is ultimately so disappointing. It's terrible. And now look, I'm not here to tell you what you should think about this movie. Of course, this is all just my personal opinions. I'm just some dude on the internet. So if you're really looking forward to watching this movie, if you've been keeping up with all the news about it and you're really excited for it, then please go and enjoy it. But for me, Snow White 2025 was a huge miss. It's badly paced, it's visually bland, the acting is weak, the new songs are lifeless, and the whole thing just feels like it was made by a committee. And I'm all for doing remakes if you can bring something new to the table, but this wasn't that. This was just noise. So yeah, if you're on the fence about seeing this movie, maybe wait for it to come out on Disney Plus or just rewatch the original. That totally holds up. But whatever you think, if you've seen Snow White already or if you plan on seeing it, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Just try to keep it civil. I know that people can get really heated about this kind of thing. And if you want to keep up to speed on all the new big movies coming out, make sure you subscribe. All right, my dude, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.